Hey Ottawa, this is Annalie Rice with Royal LePage Performance Realty. Here's your Monday market snapshot for Ottawa's real estate market on Monday, March 20th, 2023. Happy first day of spring. First off, we've got the citywide stats for this week. We see a very small increase in the number of active listings at the end of the week. We're up by 9, and the increase was basically all condominiums. That's up by 17. The number of detached homes listed for sale right now is down by 10 compared to last week. I think that this drop in the family-sized homes is probably due to March break. Lots of families are away on vacations. The number of sales this week was also down. We've got negative 14 from last week for a total of 178 sales. Again, I think this is to do with the March break. On this graph, we can see the effects of the active listings and the sold properties visually. There's essentially no change, if not a slight decrease in the number of properties marketed and or sold this week across the city. For the second week in a row, we see that our number of new listings dropped. And this week we saw a total of 273 properties listed for sale. Of these 273, 14% were properties that were being relisted and 86% were newly listed homes. Those ratios are a little higher for the newly listed homes than past weeks. And you can also see here that the sold properties were a little bit lower this week. On this slide, we see what the breakdown is between properties that sold with or without conditions. This week, we see 78% of the properties that sold had a conditional period, and that's great for buyers. Checking in on how long homes are taking to sell, of the properties that sold this week, only 10% of them sold within 7 days. That's a little bit down from last week and previous weeks where we were seeing higher numbers. Last week, it was 18% of the homes selling within 7 days on the market. 57% of the homes that sold this week were on the market for 30 days or less, and that was about the same as last week. Okay, let's zoom into the different areas of the city for some more details. In the central urban area, we see a slight increase in the number of condominiums that are for sale this week, but we see quite an obvious drop in the number of condominiums that sold this week. In fact, across the property types, we see a drop in sales this week. In Canada and Stittsville, there was a drop in the number of townhomes listed for sale. Now, this could be due to the fact, or partially due to the fact, that there were higher number of townhomes that sold this week. And most notably for sales, if you look at the condos, there were 10 condo sales this week. That's 30% of the properties that are on the market currently. So that's a lot for Canada. In Barrhaven and Riverside South, we see modest increases to active listings for detached homes and townhomes. Sales of detached homes dropped in half, and condo sales rebounded from last week when we saw 0 sales. And finally, in Orleans, we see a continued increase in the number of condominiums listed for sale. We are up significantly from just a couple weeks ago. We saw another jump in the number of detached homes selling in Orleans this week. 20 detached homes sold in 1 week. That's significant. It represents over 25% of the homes actively listed. As always, I've got the full stats and table form here for detached homes, townhomes, and condominiums. The days on market continue to slowly creep down despite the slow increase of listings. My thought is that we're going to see a marked jump in the new listings in the coming weeks. March break was definitely a cause for a couple of slow weeks. My comment last week about condos selling quicker in the suburbs ended up reversing itself this week. For both Canada Stittsville and Barrhaven Riverside South, we see a huge jump in the average number of days on market for these areas. Now, that can be because there's only a few sales and you could have one that's been on for a long time. It pulls up the average very significantly. As I mentioned last week, with stats being a snapshot, the numbers are better looked at as a longer term trend. If you find these updates informative, please make sure you don't miss any future releases. Follow me on YouTube at Your Ottawa Realtor and click subscribe. I hope you have a great week. Happy spring.